this is probably one of my favorite topics, design thinking. And obviously, even in a climate where everything is shifting online, design thinking is actually more important than before because the foundational values are still the same. We still need to put the students in between and empathize with their needs more so than ever. Collaborate with different people, experiment, test, and iterate. So these are things at the same time we're prototyping on a mass scale. Everyone is prototyping because everyone is adjusting and they're realizing, stress testing, working out that it didn't work, adjusting, and so on. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you was how is design thinking working in this current climate, and how do we use this approach to critically think and problem solve to educate better, and especially on an online context?
Absolutely agree with everything you've said, Rashan, and I think the opportunity that we have now to embed the skills required for a design thinking approach is even more important than ever before, because when you're looking at what are the key features of a successful online learning environment being feedback, engagement, feedback, collaboration, all those 21st century skills that we've been focusing on in education for such a long time. I think having a design thinking mindset enables you really to develop a system of learning or a journey of learning, or however you want to phrase it, that really brings the student along and enables them to have ownership because they've got purpose.
Yeah.
So they're developing and they're testing and they're refining and things like that. And in doing that, they've then got to collaborate with peers, they've got to collaborate with their teacher, they've got to collaborate with outside, they've got to do research, they've got to bring in real world skills. And if that design process, and as we've done in our previous design thinking workshops, if that's based on a real world issue, then all of a sudden you're making it real for the students and you're giving them real world ownership of what they're learning, which then brings that engagement along. And then using those design thinking process to then bring collaboration and engagement into the learning environment helps retain the student ownership and the student accountability in regards to their learning, with a view to their achievement at the end, what that achievement is, whether that's developing a project, developing an ideation, developing a solution, answering a response to an assessment task being under exam conditions or an assignment condition. I think if you use design thinking as that core for the development of your learning process, that enables you to bring all those different aspects in. It also gives you a framework for learning, which is really, really important, and a common language. Now, the beauty of the education system and landscape at the moment, since our redevelopment with the ATAR system, is that within every syllabus that's in existence in high school learning at the moment, there is an aspect of design learning. And I've spent some time over the past 6 months looking at every syllabus that we have. They all have an aspect of inquiry learning as a minimum, or they actually literally have a design thinking process built into it.
Yeah.
So that enables us to have that common language and framework for our subjects to apply that design thinking ideology, to develop that common language and platform for learning, to be able to give the students an opportunity for ownership, for engagement, for collaboration, for discovery, for inquiry, for achievement, for a whole range of things. It's going to enable the learning to be both seamless, but most importantly rich for both the teacher and the student. And I think that's an important part of that move to a successful online environment from the systems we have at the moment. Is it straightforward? No. Is it going to be...
It's not supposed to be.
Well, this is true. But is it? And I think that's part of the beauty of the process and the situation that we're in at the moment, is that more so than ever before, the teacher is becoming a learner. So the teacher is going through that design process, because we are designing new learning outcomes, we're designing new learning approaches, we're designing new learning opportunities for both staff and students. So we're participating in the design learning process ourselves. So it's really leveled the playing field, and provided us with an opportunity to re-embark on a brand new world of learning, which I believe is going to be much richer on the other side, and much more valuable to both the students and the pathway that they travel, whether they're primary, high school or tertiary, but also the end product. So the students that are going to be leaving us into industry, leaving us into tertiary education, leaving us into higher education as a instructor themselves. I think they're going to leave us as a much more richer citizen and a much more richer participant because of the skills that they're going to acquire through this new system that's being forced on us by the events that have unfolded over the past 6 months.
And if I may actually break down the actual approach, we're currently understanding and researching, but not everyone actually does research the way they should. We're not, because we're in a quick, reactive environment, we're not doing the research in the target group that we actually should be, not as some universities and schools have seen do this better than others. And this is actually why it's important, like you mentioned, to involve the student in that journey to get feedback constantly. So one of the tips and tricks that we always do is at the end of a lecture, at the end of a tutorial, we ask them, how was that for you? What worked, what didn't? That's when you get the little things like, hey, the music could be awesome, or this was good, it felt like we were talking to a friend, or chatting online. So little things like that. And then some students mentioned that their internet cut out halfway through, but there was no way for them to actually contact us. So making sure that we're also looking at our emails is another thing, because that student emailed us through his phone, even though his PC died or their internet connection died. So it's little things like that that make sure we're constantly design, iterating, keeping them in that feedback loop is very important. Now, the other thing that I have found interesting, which goes back to engagement and actually empathizing with your student audience, is storytelling. Now, storytelling seems, why would that be relevant here? But I didn't actually 100% realize that myself until I was the student going through some business training recently, where the speaker, this was one of the best speakers in the world, alongside Richard Branson, for example, and Tony Robbins. All they did was have their PowerPoint screen online. Now, this was again an in-person masterclass cancelled for online delivery. One of the best things that they did was have a visual aid so that, again, it's not text, it's not boring paragraphs and paragraphs. While that picture was there, he was telling us a story. And that story related to himself, it related to the subject content, it related to the background of where he came from. It came to the actual next step that he was actually going to take us to. But because it was a story, we were engaged. And this was only for 2 hours, so which is bigger than most classroom lessons. And we were hooked on it the whole time. I was personally hooked. I can't speak for anyone else, but I was actually hooked on it simply because of the storytelling aspect. And why? Because we're emotions are driven, so we're not just sitting there trying to absorb knowledge, which actually sticks in your mind better when it's emotionally evoked. So storytelling is one of the biggest and most engaging tips and tricks, because again, it keeps the student laughing, it keeps them engaged. Now, I employed this within my lecture after going through the training, and straight off the bat, all I did was share what the current climate has been like and setting up the visual of what I'm doing right now. So all I said was the story of walking into the empty lecture room and currently what I'm seeing, literally the screen and 500 empty seats. So that's a very different scenario, but they can visualize it, and all I did was show them how I feel. Now, showing how I felt, it was just a story of 30 seconds of how I walked in and seeing this and what it's surreal, and I was actually telling them that I missed that, which is true. But that allowed them to go, hey, this is not just another lecture, we're not just going to drone on about something that they have a half interest in. They felt like they were connected. So that's the most important thing, that bringing that empathy from their point of view and storytelling to employ their engagement. Design thinking, hands down, is the required approach for this current climate. Because at the end of the day, we have a challenge ahead of us and we're problem solving.
I absolutely agree with you there, Rashan. And I think one of the biggest challenges for teachers, I know in schools, is that historically we've been the master of our domain. We've been the source of knowledge. We've been the person the student can rely on. As I said before, we're now on a level playing field. We're now the learner.
Yeah.
And I think what we need to do is it's a true call to arms where we need to be able to rely on each other. We need to be able to, as part of the research process, reach out to a peer and go, I'm thinking about trying this. What do you think? Give me some feedback before I give it to the students. And also look for the feedback from the students, because we no longer have a tried and tested method of delivery, because it's been taken away. So we are now embarking on a new journey, and we need to refine that as we go. And we can refine that in a number of different ways. You said it in one of the videos earlier about just jumping online and testing a few things.
Yeah.
So look at, if you're thinking about trying a new thing online, in regards to feedback, in regards to having a chat, in regards to looking at a collaboration space, seeing if you can get a couple of peers together and going, look, I'm going to lead this. Can you pretend to be my students?
Yeah.
And give me some feedback on that process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's at times, can be a real challenge for teachers, because there's an assumption in the community that we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Not that we don't, but there's an assumption there that we are the knowledge.
Well, the problem is it is uncharted territory. So you can't be expected to know when no one's gone through that process before. So I reckon that's where the teachers that's why I actually have a lot of respect for the teachers, because you have to almost put on that brave face and go on to battle without a gun sometimes.
And it can be a challenge at times, but it's a matter of using the skills that we've got as teachers and the things we have in regards to empathy, in regards to communication, collaboration, connection, and having that vulnerability to a certain extent of being able to say, we're going to try this.
Yep.
It may work, it may not, but I think the outcomes are worth a go. But just saying to the students, okay, thank you for your feedback. I know there's some things that we can change to make it better for the next time.
Yeah.
And I'll work towards that. It's a matter of not being the master of your domain anymore, because that domain doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of using all the resources that you have, the time you have, if you've got that available, to be able to test, to be able to trial, to be able to research, to be able to contact others and go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I really want to accomplish this. Do you have some suggestions? And really reaching out and embarking on that new journey that you were a little thinking about but not real sure of.
Yeah.
Now's the time to go, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And if you're unsure, using those resources you have, whether it's a peer, whether it's a trusted group of students, whether it's your family, and saying, look, I want to jump online and try this. Can I Skype you, or can I do a Zoom session with you, just so that I can see if it works and see what it feels like?
Yeah.
Or give somebody else and go, look, I'd like you to Zoom with me so I know what it feels like, or a Skype, or I'd like you to share this with me, and just that, or prepare a tool and then fill it in as a student and go, well, okay, what were the strengths and weaknesses of that opportunity?
Actually, on that note, one of the tips that we use when we're developing anything on a computer is going online and then seeing what you're seeing, which is the teacher's point of view. You're the facilitator editing it or creating whatever that might be, whether that's a quiz or an activity, and then opening it on a private browser, because you can log in with a different login. So if you're struggling to find people, or if you're shy to approach someone, that's one step that they can do before actually approaching someone, is testing it yourself. But again, like you said, there's absolutely no way to replace asking a family member or a student to put yourself in that shoe. Go, oh no, my internet connection doesn't work, or started to lag and I missed that whole sentence. What do I do? These are the problems that the students are going to know. And empathy is visual. So I reckon you can do that step before actually reaching out to people. Just make sure that you can test it on a private browser. It doesn't matter about the browser itself. Make sure you test both ends, and then go to that other step, what you mentioned, and then go to your students. and constantly keep that feedback loop happening.
Absolutely. And I think, like all good learning, I think feedback is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And if we continually seek and provide feedback, that's how we're going to be able to move to that form of delivery where we are comfortable, where we're achieving those successful goals in a much quicker iteration than what we could do otherwise if we choose not to seek feedback. It's a challenge, but the teachers that I know and the teachers that I've been involved with are up for the challenge. That's both at Kawana and elsewhere. And I look forward to the journey which we're about to travel. And to see what we can accomplish with our students when they're not in our classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.